It's been recorded on Facebook.
Mhm.
Oh, And welcome to the third half presented by Gilbert Rugby Canada. I'm David Cameron Donny here with Madison Dennison, IGR's new chair. Madison, welcome to the third half.
Thank you, David. It's a pleasure to be here. Pleasure to be sitting watching a rugby game. I don't know how many of these you got live watching a game.
Haven't done too many because, it's kind of distracting when we're watching a good game.
Yeah,
And it
so,
is a good game right now.
yeah. We're watching the Dublin Emerald Warriors playing Nashville Women's Rugby RFC in the third place final for the Amanda Mark Cup.
So, as we're waiting for them to get play going again, how has the Bingham Cup experience been for you in Rome?
It's been amazing. I mean, the rugby's been phenomenal, great quality. Amazing to see so many different play styles, team structures come together from all over the world. And like always, tournaments like this, Bingham and our regional tournaments, are a celebration of our community. So it's also just amazing to get everyone together
Yep.
and experience that.
What do you think will be the biggest takeaway from this Bingham for participants, for supporters, for the rugby community?
Well, I think there's kind of two big areas of that. One is that we can all come together like this. 3,500, people from the overall queer community coming together to a rugby tournament is phenomenal here
Yep.
in Rome, nonetheless. But obviously, with that growing scale, and in a city like Rome, we're facing logistical challenges, growing pains. So I think there's a long list. And then also the joys of coming together as a community and reminding ourselves of how important these events are.
Yep, exactly. Um, Sorry, we're just kind of distracted with play. So today we've got the men. We've got the Amanda Mark Cup third place final now. Now at 2 o'clock we've got the Amanda Mark Cup, 3 o'clock trans match, and 4:05 all local time in Rome. We've got the Bingham Cup final. All will be broadcast live streamed on the Rugby Network. So if anyone's interested, the URL is in the ticker. Well, you're going to be playing for the Ottawa Wolves.
I am.
How? I mean, it's kind of an awkward question. Like the Lowlanders have done a really amazing job.
Yeah.
The Wolves have. I've okay. Woo! I'm a Wolves fan. But which way do you think the match could go? Or I know it's a hard question,
Yeah.
and it's kind of hard to be impartial, but it's okay not to be impartial because you're playing.
Yeah.
How do you think the match is going to go?
I mean, I think it's going to be a great match. The play style is fairly different from the two clubs.
Yep.
So I've been watching the Lowlanders a lot over the course of the tournament, and they play a very fast, very skilled kind of type of rugby. Bit smaller, more out to the backs. Wolves have a really strong pack, so we're gonna hit them hard
Nice.
and
Really strong
keep
pack.
hitting them hard. So I mean, obviously, my money's on the Wolves.
Yeah, well, there you go. Um,
No
Now-
shade, Lowlanders.
Now, looking at your new position as IGR chair, first woman, first trans woman, as head of a global organization that actually can make a difference
Mhm.
and has made a difference. can butt heads with World Rugby at times, despite our memorandum of understanding.
Similar to what my answer was before in a sense, because I think there's a duality of the directions that we're going to go, but both are really important. I think because of the scale we've achieved, and this tournament is evident of that, we really need to work on professionalizing across the organization and centralizing functions into IGR from the hosts of the tournaments. That makes sense. So, things like registration, just to make that smoother process,
Yep.
to take that burden away from the hosts. But then on the kind of global nature of it, I think leaning into our role as advocates, what we saw from 2020 when World Rugby announced their gender inclusion policy, their trans ban, and then in 22 when we saw it seep into the community level from the RFU in England and Scottish Rugby and then Welsh Rugby and then eventually the IRFU as well. They've all actually implemented trans bans, and that's just unacceptable. We know the value of rugby, the value of sport across the entire queer community, and I mean in every community for that matter. So I think it's really important that efforts and make sure that the national unions are constantly reevaluating their policies, understanding the realities that we are living and playing with daily across the world.
Well, it's something that Amanda Mark and I have spoken about because I've had her twice on the show, and it's just rugby players come in every shape and size. So the sheer fact that there's a ban on trans players, which doesn't it is so illogical and so contrary to just common sense. Something that we do have an opportunity to push forward with, and use the power of this global organization that we have, to help forward trans rights.
Yeah, and I think part of the journey in doing that is also by increasing how inclusive we are. To be honest,
Yep.
IGR was founded 25 years ago now to give a safe space for gay men to play rugby, which was incredibly needed at the time. It's amazing how far we've come socially, especially in North America and Western Europe. Thinking about the fact that 25 years ago, gay marriage wasn't legal anywhere. There's still a tremendous amount of pressure against that community. Obviously, the regressive politics and kind of socio-cultural moment we're experiencing is more focused on the trans issues. And as such, IGR really needs to recognize the fact that traditionally we haven't done as great of a job including women and femme-identifying queer folks. But if you watch these Amanda Mark Cup games, you can really see that tide turning.
Yeah.
And I think it's a tremendous opportunity to lean into that broader community so that we can actually better advocate for them when we're actually dealing with national unions or World Rugby. And then on the other side of it, to be honest, is leveraging our unique position as an international charity to help bring the national unions together that have different experiences on this issue. So, I play in Canada, and Rugby Canada has an incredibly inclusive policy that's working. USA Rugby has an inclusive policy that's working. The French Federation has an inclusive policy that's working. And so pulling these unions together and putting them in conversation with folks like the RFU in England, I think would make huge strides in improving that inclusion.
No, absolutely. And it's just, I think you made a good point with mentioning specific unions like Rugby Canada, like US Rugby, because they are so, in comparison to other rugby unions, they're progressive. And they are setting a good example for these other unions that it's like, sorry, really good play. Oh, they are setting a really good example for these other rugby unions around the world that it's like, use your common sense.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, it's funny because in a sense, obviously tragic in another, but you hear everyone saying, oh, follow the science. Science is about experimentation. If anything, you can look at the empirical evidence, the experimentation. Trans women are playing women's rugby all over the world, except in a very small pocket. If there was an elevated risk to damaging the game from either fairness or from player welfare, then that would be very evident. And we actually do have the empirical evidence that it's not. And so we need to work together to make sure that is digestible and communicatable in a way that everyone can appreciate, because claiming that some model that you generate statistically is empirical evidence is just completely false. It's not. You need to actually test it and see what happens in the real world. And we're doing that every day in Canada and the USA and in France and all around the world.
And today with Bingham Cup,
Today, yes.
this is a thing that, and I've mentioned this before, where I've seen some female rugby players, and I'm not a small fella, that make me look insignificantly small. So you have, again, every shape and size. So the, the argument that it's unbalanced for trans players to play it's preposterous.
Yeah. No, I mean, like you said, rugby leans itself so well into full inclusion and representation because there's a place for every body type on the field. And we hear that time and time again when it comes to cis men.
Yeah.
But we realize that policing women's bodies is something that sports federations and unions have done for centuries. And it's something we're going to have to keep pushing back on.
Well, again, that's, IGR can be that voice. And I think with you at the helm, that's really going to continue on with a lot more fervor, which, is what the world needs. They need to hear this side of the coin, because once you hear it, it's like you can't argue against it.
Yeah.
Because, like you say, empirically, there's no difference.
Yeah.
Inclusion it's how rugby has always been.
Yeah.
Who are you? And now this is putting you on the spot. Who are your favorites for the Bingham Cup?
I'm gonna stay quiet on that. Actually, I'm not gonna let you pigeonhole me on that.
I tried to get Amanda to do that.
It's gonna be a great game. As one of my teammates back home in Halifax always says, I just hope everyone has fun. I hope both teams have fun.
Now we're looking forward to 2026. We had both bids come up. I mean, I think both have got merit. Do you think that there's an advantage for the South American teams for their position of bringing the cup to South America to give the opportunity for those clubs that can't participate and travel like a lot of people in the first world to be able to participate in Bingham? Because this is my fourth Bingham. It's an amazing experience.
Yeah.
Oh,
they get one?
Yeah. Ireland just got it.
So
nice.
Another one for the Emerald Warriors.
I haven't seen any conversions yet.
So do you think, I mean, and this is not putting you on the spot for, who should get the next Bingham, but do you think that there's merit to that argument?
I think so. So once again, we've got an interesting kind of duality or polarity between those, because the Brisbane bid is really solid.
Yep.
Australia and Brisbane have great infrastructure. I think they'll deliver an amazing Bingham Cup. And this is an opportunity for us to reflect as a community. Do we want to just make sure the tournament is as squeaky clean and run well and a well-oiled machine? Because that sounds great.
Yep.
But do we also want to use it as an opportunity to build a strong community, to include everyone from around the world, to get all of those gay identifying rugby teams in South America that have never been able to make it to a Bingham Cup, to be able to experience it? And do we also want to plant that IGR flag in a continent we've never actually hosted a tournament in before?
Yep.
So I think there's two great arguments there.
Absolutely.
But I think we'll have to wait till our community decides.
Yeah, no. And when does it come down? When is the vote?
So we'll be releasing a few different phases of that throughout the summer. Right now, both hosts are receiving feedback on their bid presentations that were delivered just earlier last week. And once they've incorporated that feedback, they'll issue a second iteration of the bids to the trustees, and we'll provide them another round of feedback to make sure that they're as tight and polished as possible before releasing it to the wider IGR community.
Yep.
And then everyone gets to vote.
Timeline is this fall. Would that make sense?
I would anticipate
Like
late
September,
summer,
October?
early fall. I'd say it's September.
Okay.
Because this Bingham is earlier than previous.
Yeah.
And we're
you're
here
right.
in May. I hope to be able to be done that bid process by the end of August, maybe early September.
Oh,
We'll see what happens.
Missed the conversion. Oh well, they're still up.
Yeah, they didn't need it. Sorry, Nashville.
Um, well, I'm actually getting really distracted by the match.
You're getting more distracted than I am.
I know.
I'm the one that asked us to be watching it.
Well, I think what we'll do is we will tie things off here with Madison. We have more opportunities today, even though we're only scheduled to be back on at 5:15 Central European time. I think I might come on a couple more times in between to give updates on what's happening with the matches. So get as much of a live update as possible. In addition to the Rugby Network, again, the Rugby Network is broadcasting all three matches starting at 2, 3, and 4:05 for the Amanda Mark Cup, the Trans Match, and the Bingham Cup. Accordingly, go to the rugbynetwork.com/schedules. And until the next time we are live, thank you for joining us. Madison, thank you for joining.
Oh, thanks for having me, Dave.